taxes are a big deal, especially in Texas. I'm curious, how do you determine property taxes for a new buyer? And this comes up from the lender standpoint, because people will say, no, I called and it's only going to be this amount. And we say, that's great, but it's the appraiser that is going to tell us exactly how much it's going to be underwritten at. What happens there is if it's over, we can't get you as many loan dollars if we're estimating it to be higher. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I think it's a sticking point for a lot of, especially in Texas, that there's, there's just some frustration, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a huge sticking point. I would say 9 times out of 10, when I see deals that have to have proceeds cut, it's over taxes. And so that's always a bummer. And we want to do everything we can to help you guys understand on the get-go what those look like. So that way everyone's expectations are set on, what's right loan amount and how do we maximize those loan dollars given how we need to look at taxes. And Fannie and Freddie have their own ideas of what taxes need to look like on a stabilized basis. So when you're getting your appraisal done, they'll tell you, you need to defer to the appraiser, but we also have to work with the agency in terms of what they're expecting to see too. So it's a twofold process there. But the important thing to know about taxes, and this is the sticking point, is that taxes are not about what the actual tax amount is going to be for next year. What's important from an underwriting and from an appraisal standpoint is what are the taxes going to be, assuming that the property sells, whether it's selling or not, because an appraisal inherently assumes a transaction. We're answering the question in that appraisal of, if you put a for sale sign in the front yard of this apartment complex, what does it sell for? And so that question assumes a sale. So whether it's a refi or a transaction, we assume that there's a sale taking place. So that's really important to know for taxes. And then also, are we properly capturing the long-term reassessment risk of this property in our pro forma tax amount? The reason for that is that we're only taking 1 year of cash flow and capitalizing that 1 year of cash flow into a value, which means that 1 year has to assume the risk of your entire hold period of the asset. If we were doing what we call a discounted cash flow, what we would do is we would consider what would the actual taxes be in every year, and then we would discount those cash flows back to a net present value. But because we have to consider all the risk in that one cash flow, we have to consider that in the taxes. But it can also be considered in the cap rate. So what you want is you want an appraiser who's going to consider the right balance of risk between tax expense and cap rate, given the state, given the climate of the agencies for that state and lenders for that state, and given what market expectations are for that state. So I may have lost you guys in a lot of appraisal mumbo jumbo there.
That was very deep, and I think there's a lot of value. Should we go over that one more time? Do I see any heads that are saying yes, we want to go over that? Yep, I see hands. Yeah. So go ahead, if you would just unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
But that was really, really good stuff.
Let me give you an example. So in Texas, every property is appraised or reassessed every year by the assessors. So it doesn't matter whether there's a sale or not. Every property gets reassessed every year. But Texas is a non-disclosure state, so the assessors don't know what a property is going to be traded for unless that purchase price gets out. And unfortunately, they get out more than we would like them to. So assessments in the state of Texas tend to be anywhere from 60 to 90% of purchase prices in the year after a purchase. So if we have a property that's currently assessed at, say, 40% of the purchase price, we're way below the typical range of 60 to 90%. So the appraiser's got to decide what are the appropriate pro forma taxes for this deal based on where it's currently assessed, based on what we think would happen after the sale, and appropriately considering the risk of that guess or that projection in our cap rate. So if we were to say, let's use a 50% assessment ratio on this deal. It's below the typical range of 60 to 90, but it's still 10% above where it's currently assessed. It's kind of a down the middle approach, but there's risk in that estimate. And so we would want to consider that risk in our cap rate. Versus if we said, okay, it's currently assessed at 40, let's mark it up to 90%, the top of the reasonable range, then we'd have a whole lot less risk in that estimate. And so we would use a lower cap rate. So what you want to do is you want to find an appraiser who's really good at finding that right middle of the road approach of putting just enough risk in the taxes and then let the rest of it fall to the cap rate, because that maximizes your loan proceeds.